Anais, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on today. So my name is Anais, and I'm a portfolio manager for CGI. So that's Cardinal Group Investments. So if you didn't know, Cardinal has a segment of their business called CGI. So we own and operate the communities versus third-party management. So I'm on the Group 4 side, and I've been with Cardinal for 3.5 years. And I guess I can kind of go into my story, my Cardinal story. So my Cardinal story started 3.5 years ago. Before that, I was kind of like Evie, and I had been in the industry for a long time, 10 years. So I started out in college as a community intern, just looking for a college job, as I feel like a lot of us start that way. And that was at the University of Florida in Gainesville. So I always have to shout out the Gators. And so I did that while I was in college for 2.5 years. And then when I graduated, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had interned with Target, I had interviewed with Amazon, so some of the bigger players. But when I interned with Target, I was like, well, do I really want to work retail? Some nights I'm working till midnight on my feet all day, working weekends, working holidays. I was like, I really like the 9 to 5, like Monday through Friday. So I decided that I would want to stay in student housing and in property management. So I took a leasing manager role in Savannah, Georgia, and I did that for a year. And then I became the property manager at that site, and I was at the same site for 3.5 years as a property manager. So really helped turn that community around, and it pretty much became like a well-oiled machine. You know, work orders were down, delinquency was less than 1%. We got to 100% occupied 3 years in a row. So I was kind of ready for a challenge. I was kind of a little comfortable there. So I was putting out some feelers with some other companies, or even within the current company that I was working at as well. And so I got in touch with Cardinal. And so that's when Chelsea mentioned I joined as a traveling community operations manager. And I traveled around because I had really only been at like 2 properties in my career prior to then. So I thought, in order to grow more, I wanted to get more exposure to other markets, other cities, different kind of groups. So I traveled for 8 months and really got some experience on the affordable side, conventional, student, new development, transitions, due diligences, just a lot of exposure to different types. So I think that really helped me kind of learn more about the business. And then after that, I became an assistant portfolio manager role, which we still have some in Cardinal. I think this role has really kind of been replaced with an ops analyst, which is Heather's role. But I did do the APM role for about a year. So you basically work directly under the portfolio manager and just kind of help with a lot of operational, financial, hiring, and like oversight of community managers. And again, got a lot more experience doing that, a lot of exposure to different clients. We worked with 6 clients at the time, and I worked for the biggest cell at Cardinal at the time, which was 14 communities. So I had my hands on a lot of things, and also got a lot of face time with different clients and groups. And so after that, I became a portfolio manager, and now I'm almost 2 years into the role. So in December, we'll make 2 years. 1 year of that being on the CGI side, but I started on the third party side. So lots there, but that's kind of my story and where I am now.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I just had a follow-up that occurred to me. When you mentioned like feeling comfortable in your on-site role, and like you sort of just, had it down pat, and that you wanted that opportunity for growth. You went the travel route, and I think that's a common one that a lot of people do when they're looking to make that jump to HQ. If you could just, speak to that, or if you've other avenues that you'd recommend to folks who are looking to sort of upskill and, are thinking to that next move.
Yeah, I think being flexible is one. Back when I was yeah, in 2019, I actually applied with Cardinal. Like back then, I didn't start working for Cardinal until 2021. So 2 years prior to that, I tried to get in the door. At the time, they needed me to relocate, and I just couldn't then. And I also didn't have Entrada experience because my old, management company was on a different program. So I think that kind of getting that Entrada experience under my belt and then being flexible to move after that helped me like grow. So I think flexibility is big. I know some people can't just pick up and be a road warrior. Like, you have families and children. And so it's not for everybody. But at the time, I was just at a point where I didn't have a dog. I didn't have a boyfriend. I don't have kids. So I was able to do that. And not saying that you can't. There's a lot of TFOMs that have families that do it. It just depends if, that's the kind of uh, lifestyle you're willing to have. But I thought it was, a blast. I was in Chicago, Arizona. I went to the Grand Canyon, like just going to all kinds of places. So it was really fun for me. So I think the flexibility is something that you should be open-minded to, because it's not going to be forever. It's a short period of time. So if you could dedicate, a year to doing something outrageous, like traveling and being on the road, 95% of the time, it could really lead to future opportunities that will give you the flexibility that you want, like I have now, which is working from home, working remotely. So you kind of have to put yourself out there. And then another thing that I was going to say is, I lost my train of thought. It was about the travel world.
We'll come back.
Okay.
Yeah, and so like I love the emphasis on flexibility, that sort of open-mindedness, spirit of curiosity. And you mentioned the Entrada platform. Any other sort of like skills-based stuff you'd recommend to folks who are looking to make that leap?
Just getting really comfortable with the different like softwares and programs that we have right now. And if so for the MTLs on the call or TFOMs, like, what's your comfortability with the Entrada app, the Entrada mobile app for facilities? What's your knowledge on the Leo app? Are you 100% on your Cardinal U? Like, those kinds of things. Just really using all the different platforms that we have. And if you don't know or are comfortable with using it, just going to Cardinal Ascend or reaching out to peers that can kind of walk you through those programs. Because like, we kind of have to adapt to what we're using. And I think with that, you kind of get used to all the programs that we use and get comfortable with them.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out, especially the rate of change that that we experience as an organization. I think that willingness to learn that unites all of us here, I think is so crucial.
Yeah, embracing change is really big. And I actually remembered what I was going to say.
Right.
This might be controversial. I don't know, but I know that everyone, when they think of a promotion, they think of making more money. And sometimes you kind of have to go a little low to go higher. So when I was a community manager and then I joined as a traveler, just because I had been at my community for so long, almost 3.5 years, like I kept, getting increases yearly and things like that. So when I joined to be a TCOM, I had like a slight pay cut, which was kind of difficult for me. But I thought, like, okay, it's not forever. This is going to give me the exposure that I need. And then quickly, 8 months later, I was able to like get back up. So I would say that sometimes I think the perception is that when you get an HQ role or any role, that you automatically get a pay raise, and it's not necessarily the case. So it's just something to be transparent about. Our on-site teams take on a lot of work, and so they are paid fairly well. So when you get the flexibility of working from home or working at an HQ level, with that more flexibility comes sometimes, like, while you have more flexible work-life balance, you might not make as much, but it's just something to be open about.
Yeah, no, I very much appreciate that transparency. Yeah, Vince, I see your hand.
Hey, so are you saying or suggesting, I guess, to move up in this Cardinal way, it's best to go from the on-site to a travel, or is there a different route you could take?
It just depends what you're looking for. So what is your interest for your next opportunity?
I kind of want to skip the TFOM part of it and go to something different. I mean,
Like a GFM?
yeah, but I brought up too, like with some of these roles, you kind of need a training thing, because a lot of people being thrown into this as if they know, but a lot of people put on the airs like they know, but they really don't know. So they're getting into roles and it's not a success for them. See what I'm saying? So if I say, if people wants to go, say from my standpoint, if you want to go to a GFM, you should have the ability to say, all right, let's get a training part on this. This is what it entails to be. This is the paperwork you need to know. This is what you need to have as credentials to be a GFM. But that is my next step, because like you just said, with the money, I don't know what T-Farms make, and I don't know if it would be beneficial
Mhm.
money-wise for me, and I would probably end up would you take a pay cut? And then you're on the travel. So me as an MTL, so I go to travel, I lose my property. I don't like being, if say I don't like being a T-Farm. I want to go back to being MTL. Then they're gonna make you have to move. You're gonna have to relocate. You're gonna have to do all of that. So I think with some of these positions, they need to give you some heads up, some insight to what it actually is. Because everything that glitters ain't gold. Grass ain't always greener on the other side. So I think you need to give insight so people will know what you're getting into.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, asking those questions, or maybe asking a GFM, like, hey, what are the pros and cons of your role? For me, being a traveler, it was a lot of fun, but I can give you a list of cons, and it's just up to you whether the cons outweigh the pros or if it's worth it to you. So I think for the GFM role, Cardinal's very competitive. I'm sure lots of MTLs want to be a GFM. I'm not saying you necessarily have to be a TFOM to be a GFM, but usually when you're a TFOM, you get a lot of that exposure to, like I mentioned, so many different markets, property types, A to C class, affordable, conventional, BTR. You just kind of get so much more exposure than just one community that you're currently at. So it's easier for, I think, the group to pick from the TFOMs to become a GFM. And I'm not saying that you can't. I know community managers that have been promoted to PMs, but it's I think not the likelihood, but the probability of being promoted from a traveling role is a lot higher. And that's just from what I've seen and people that have gotten promoted. Not saying that you can't, and you can skip the step. It'll just be probably a little bit more tough.
Yeah, I like that emphasis, Anais, on the range of skills that you'll cultivate in that time. The variety of things you'll see. I think that's huge. And it sort of leads me into my next question for you. When you're in your seat now, you spoke to having that sense of like mastery over the role you were in before. So what is an aspect of your job that you really take a lot of pride in, that you really like deliver excellently?
I guess what I take the most pride in is, it sounds cliche, but it really is, like seeing my community managers grow, or even like, a full-time leasing agent that then has gotten promoted to LMTL and then has gotten promoted to CM. Like that fulfills me the most, because I feel like I've helped guide them and prepare them for the next steps of their career. And then I guess another one would be just like the turnaround of communities is really, that's probably one of my favorite parts. Is I'm not scared of a challenge. So when I'm given a more difficult community, and even in a year's time, it's not perfect, but we've corrected so many things at the site, really trained the team members, taken the time to look at every detail, and have been able to turn it around and seeing better performance year over year is probably the things that drives me the most.
Yeah, I totally agree. That the tangible evidence of you having an impact, having that's cultivated growth for your team, I think that's so fulfilling, and that's what has been super motivating to me at Cardinal as well. So I love to hear that. When you're looking for new folks to add to your teams, what's some things you look for? That could be characteristics, traits. That could be experience, background, specific skill sets, anything. Interpret it as you will.
Yeah. So what I look for in new hires, I mean, it just depends. Like at a community that I have, it's 1,100 beds. It's a Class A property. Probably going to look for experience there, but that's not always everything to me. I think it's honestly comes down to the simple things. Like when I'm interviewing a candidate, I've interviewed leasing managers. I've interviewed MTL candidates. I've interviewed CMs. It comes down to kind of some of the basics is what really like stands out to me. And it's pretty simple, but it's, being on time for the interview, having your camera on, looking professional, feeling like you came prepared to the interview, following up after the interview. I feel like that says a lot about the character and like the kind of characteristics that I am looking for in a team member, like when we hire them on, is like, okay, they're very responsive, they're on time, they're communicative. I think a lot of those things are hard to teach, and not everybody has those skills. So honestly, that already sets you apart in my eyes, is if you're on time for the interview, you're presenting yourself well, and you're following up after. And I'm not like reaching out to the candidate a bunch of times, like, hey, are you still interested in the role? Like, they're more so reaching out to me. And something that we do on the CGI side for community managers is we send out like an applicant skills assessment. So to me too, it's like, how quickly do they turn that around? Am I following up with them on the completion of it, or are they, turning it around by the deadline that they said? So a lot of those things is kind of what I look at when looking to make a hire. And it's not always about experience, I would say. I mean, I could hire an MTL that's been an MTL for 5 years, but again, they're like grit, determination, and the way they lead might not be there. But I instead may hire an MTM who's a technician that's been a technician for maybe 6 years, has no MTL experience, but I feel like they have the passion, they're fresh, and that they're going to have a good leadership with the rest of their team. And so I might take a chance on that MTM. And usually, I would say my hires usually are pretty good. So I feel like those things have really guided me into making the right hiring decisions.
Yeah, I love that. A common thread that I definitely got there was the sense of like proactivity and independence on this person's part, that they're going to be able to move the ball forward without you just like on their case at all times. I think that's huge.
Yeah,
Vince, I saw your hand up. Oh, sorry, you had something on Anais.
Oh no, yeah, Vince, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think you kind of answered it. I was going to ask you, what would you rather have, somebody who's trainable or the experience? Because it kind of works. I mean, it's pros and cons to both sides. But I was just wondering which way, but you kind of answered that question a little bit.
Yeah, like I mentioned, obviously I don't want to put somebody super green into like a huge community, but some of my sites are smaller, 500 beds. I think that's a great size to start out a new team member that's fresh and eager to learn and not too stuck in their ways. So I think, again, embracing change, being adaptable is really big. So I know there's some MTLs on the call. I don't want to offend anyone, but I
Not
think
going to offend me.
yeah, some MTLs that like, well, I've been doing this for 20 years. And I'm like, okay, well, times have changed from 20 years ago. But I have a lot of MTLs that are, willing to embrace change. They're communicative. They're self-starters. They're very proactive. I'm so, happy and willing to work with them. Even on skills that they might not know. I rather you be teachable than kind of stuck in your ways.
That's the way I feel about it, because I've been doing this for like 30 years. And it's I learned to, and I like that, because the way they did things 15, 20 years ago, you can't do it that way now. It's not, you can't say what you used to say or do what as you used to do 20 years ago. You can't do that now because the times have changed a lot.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. And then my last question, Anais, is in your seat as a PM, I think you're such a crucial sort of liaison between the different parts of the organization. I'm wondering what you see as opportunities for us to collaborate more closely, to be a little more aligned between the HQ and on-site layers.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I think we've made we've made progress, but still ways to go in kind of being a fully integrated and vertically integrated company. And at least on the CGI side, I mean, we collaborate a lot with our different departments, because we're kind of like the spearheaders for any, demos that we want to do, any pilots, and we really try to vertically integrate with all departments. So we're using CX3, we're using well, I'm trying to think of everything else. I mean, all the other departments, CX3 just comes to mind because I feel like a lot of CGI adapts to CX3, but still working our way there through the third party side. Mm-hmm. But I just think, again, open communication with our other departments, is really big, and that's how we're going to learn and grow. So, if MTLs, you're having a hard time with Leo, bringing that up to James Graham and the Leo team and saying, where can improvements be made so that it's more, user friendly, or that we can adapt to it. And if, there's things on the CX3 side that are room for improvement, like making sure that we're bringing that up to the CAMs. and their department heads, so that we can make sure that we're making progress towards bettering the offerings that we have, so that we can become more vertically integrated. So I think instead of just kind of saying, oh, well, we have to use these programs and we're going to just make do, is like, that's fine, but still making sure that we're making the time to call out any feedback that we have, or making sure that we are voicing anything that we think can be improved.
Yeah. I love that emphasis on, being proactive, taking ownership of delivering feedback. I think so often we're reliant on, getting a survey to make our voice known. But I think really cultivating those channels where you feel like I can have a voice at the table. I think that's really impactful. Yeah, Vince.
Do you think that the reason why people who don't voice their opinions is they may be scared or not feel like they may not be heard about certain things? Where, say like Leo, for example, they're stuck on Leo. They said Leo is here to stay and Trotta is here to stay. It ain't going nowhere. So if you bring up something negative against it, do you think people feel like they're gonna get lashed back off of it because they saying it's this, it's that, and it's somebody's baby? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't even necessarily think it's a negative thing, but if it's something's not working, like, we need to bring that up. And it's not a negative thing. It's just a fact, and it's just data. So, I mean, 2 days ago, a couple days ago, I brought up to James Graham, an issue I was having in Leo, and he was on it right away, connecting me with Leo, making sure that I was getting my questions answered. And like, the department heads that have these programs, they want to make sure it's optimized because we put so many time and resources and money behind them. So we want to make sure that it's working to its full potential. So I just hope people don't feel like it's like you're in trouble or anything. I actually think it will put you out there and expose you more to more parts of the company, and saying, oh, Vince has a lot of great feedback on ways that we can optimize Leo. Let's add him to a demo call, or let's put him in touch with James Graham, who's the director of, facilities. And I think it kind of makes you look better because you're actually paying attention to what's working and what's not, and you're bringing it up for the betterment of the company. So I mean, I get a lot of feedback. I give a lot of feedback to different departments, but I think people value my feedback. So I'm looped into, like I said, different pilots, different optimization groups, because I like voice my opinion. So I definitely think it's more positive than like negative feedback that you're going to get for bringing things up.
Yeah, I love that answer, Anais. And I would just say, I think there's a distinction between negativity and constructivity. If you're bringing feedback that is going to help the growth and success of this product or this platform, that's a really strong thing to demonstrate. It's a really strong behavior and mindset to demonstrate. And to Anais's point, you're showing that you're thinking strategically about all of the moving pieces in the business and how they can be optimized in a way that does differentiate you, when you're going for a more elevated role. So yeah, fully echo that sentiment. Sean.
Yeah, I mean, myself, my first work order program was DOS, and so I've gone through quite a bit of different work order systems, work management systems, PM systems, working for Marriott International. They're incredible with the analytics that they put forth and being able to grow within them. But, having that insight is not a bad thing, but knowing how to present it is sometimes can be a challenge. You have to, it needs to be factual. It doesn't need to be emotional. It just needs to be fact driven and presented in the proper manner. But, being the oldest dog, as long as you can, learn new tricks, is not a bad thing.
Yeah. No, I love that perspective, Sean. And we got a similar sort of sentiment from Chelsea and Amanda in the chat as well, about just saying it in the spirit of growth and improvement. And yeah, to your point, by bringing your facts to the table. Any other, just open questions now before we hand it off to Anais to walk through some of the projects on her plate? Yeah, Jay, I saw her. Yeah, Jay and then Chelsea.
Okay, so this is going to be like a unique question. I guess it's more of just like a personal like feeling that I have. But one thing that doesn't necessarily like prevent me from seeking higher roles, but it's kind of like in the back of my mind each time that I want to go forward, is what happens to the team when I'm gone. Or like, I feel as though if I'm removed from a specific situation, that all of a sudden the people that I leave behind are drowning, can't keep their head above water. What type of, or I guess like, how can you combat not only that feeling, but kind of prepare yourself and your staff for the changes that you want to make in your career development?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And my advice there is what I did when I was on site, at my community for 3.5 years. I felt comfortable leaving because I had prepared and geared up the rest of my team with knowing the ins and outs of everything. So I think I've really changed my ways on doing everything myself because I'm a micromanager. I like to have my hands in everything, but the way for me to get promoted is to, again, leave my community like a well-oiled machine. It's like you take Jay out and the community runs seamlessly. That is like the best way for your growth. And it'll make you feel more comfortable when, you're the leasing manager, right? Yeah. So you're looping in your CIs to help you build out the MMP. They, CIs are typically in college, so they can pretty much handle like social media posting, creating the cute Canva flyers for the e-blasts, hosting the resident events with you and like preparing it with you. If you're out, like delegating that to, if you're out at the end of the week when you need to get the market survey, like delegating that to one of your CIs, showing them how to input it into RAIN, like really exposing the rest of your team to the ins and outs of your role and kind of giving them that insight of what you do so that when you are pulled, everybody knows how to do everything. It's not only Jay's the only one that knew how to do this at your current site. So that's something that I really spent my time doing. And it does take a lot of time. You probably have to put in some extra hours, but really preparing the rest of my team to know what I do and like looping them into that, because one, it's giving them exposure to say, oh, maybe I want to be a leasing manager in the future because I'm learning the ins and outs of Jay's role and I'm able to do it. And also, again, it's just going to be more comfortable for you leaving when you're like, I've shown everyone how to do everything. If everything's on fire and I'm pulled out, like the community's not going to fall apart. Like you've showed them and giving them that exposure to everything. So that would be my challenge to you is like, as you find time, maybe dedicating an hour a week with your team to kind of show them a weekly task or daily task that you do, and maybe even delegating it to them so they could feel empowered in their role and like continue learning.
Yeah, that was an awesome answer, Anais. I think you gave some really great specifics. And I would just say more broadly, Jay, from my seat, sort of take stock of the areas that you're most concerned about not having your fingerprint on, and then think about who's a good fit to take up the reins, in your absence in the future. But I think the fact that you have that mindset to me is the mark of a great leader already. So
yeah, I love that you're like worried about them, because some people are like, I'm on to my next role, see ya. But you're like actually like, oh, I'm concerned about my team and like how they're gonna do. So I love that. It shows like your humility and like how much you care about your team.
Yeah, totally. Thank y'all. And I don't want to take away from anyone else's time, but I've been in that position where like my CM, my LMTLs have just been like, bye, like nice knowing you sort of deal. And then you're kind of floundering. But also we have really high turnover at this property as of recent. So it's just kind of one of those thoughts of like, oof, like these people are a little bit inexperienced, not a bad thing, but kind of just like I said, preparing them for the upcoming projects.
Yeah, and one more thing to note there, and then we can go to Chelsea, is with you saying that and having a lot of high turnover, like something that I did on site was I would like take screenshots of like, a certain process. Let's say that like I had to pull a report, I would like pull screenshots of that and put it in a document that's like housed in my drive. So it could be easily shared with new team members so that you're not like physically showing them, but like having documented or templates that you can save so that when new team members start, they can easily pick up from there, not all be like in-person training and then they leave and then all that information's gone. So like really documenting things in your drive is important too.
Great follow-up. Great cherry on top there. Chelsea.
Okay. Two-part question. So you kind of answered this a little bit earlier, but maybe you can, or maybe you have another answer to it. But in your role as portfolio manager, what is your favorite part of the role? And then what is your least favorite part of the role?
Okay, that's a good one. My favorite part is I kind of touched on this, but just working with my team members, like working with my CMs, that's kind of what drives me. I could do solo work, but I really like being part of like a bigger team and like collaborative effort. So for example, like, starting out with a CM and like, they're like, honestly, I've been a CM, but I really don't know how to do an RNA workbook. Like, I don't know how reclasses work or accruals work. And like, just seeing their growth and like development over the next couple of months, and then them catching stuff that I'm not catching. And I'm like, look at you go, like you're learning and you're growing. So really seeing the growth in my team members and them feeling more comfortable and confident in their roles is like my favorite part. My least favorite part, to be frank, probably like resident escalations and angry parents. That's not very fun. And I know like on site, you get so many more of it like day to day, but sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm still doing that. Still part of my role. So dealing with like the complaints is not fun, but like fixing it for them is very satisfying, or like leaving them like feeling like comfortable with our team and comfortable living at our community always turns it around. And usually I kind of like hype up the situation more in my head than it usually turns out to be. So it's not as bad as it actually turns out to be. It's just like, oh, well, that wasn't too bad. But yeah, dealing with the angries is not too fun.
Great question, Chelsea. Appreciate it. Was that both parts? The favorite,
Yeah.
least favorite? Okay,
Yeah.
Cool. I want to hand it over to Anais now. She's going to screen share and just talk through some things she's working on right now and sort of her approach, her thought process.
Cool. Yeah. So every day is a little different. And obviously we kind of have like our typical deliverables that we have to do each week, but specifically for this week, my sites have already launched renewals. So it's pretty early, but we wanted to kind of get out of the gate early and kind of beat the market, just because some of my sites didn't meet their occupancy goals from where we wanted them to be. So I'm going to share my screen here, but something that I'm working on right now is our new lease rates. So like I mentioned, we've already launched renewals, but something that we're working through in launching is our new leases. And something that we're doing differently this year compared to last year is that at CGI, we partner with YieldStar to make rate recommendations, but we've actually moved away from that and are kind of reverting back to more of a third-party approach, which is a tiered system when it comes to leasing. So basically what I have here is basically what we achieved for the current year. So as far as like occupancy, how many new leases, what our average rate was. And then what we have here on the right is our proposed rates and what I think our renewals are going to look like in each floor plan. And then over here to the right is kind of asset management questions and my responses to them. So for the maintenance leads on the call, they're like, what are you talking about? So essentially each year you're setting your rates on what we need to achieve. And so sometimes it's really important, maintenance has a big play on resident satisfaction and getting those renewals in the door. But new leases, sometimes I feel like we have community managers and leasing managers is like, why do we have to lease them at that rate? Why can't we lease them at this? Well, all of that is tied into many different things. What our performa was with our ownership group, like we have targets that we said we were going to meet. So sometimes we do have to meet these thresholds. And that's why sometimes we have to set certain price points and just really train our team on making, being able to sell the community at the rates that we're proposing. So essentially what I have here is just, again, what we did in 2024, 2025, what we're proposing in 25, and then what our year-over-year rent growth is in each of those floor plans. So you can see for VOT, we're projecting like a 6% rent growth. And if you were on the call earlier with Jen Cassidy, it showed that like CGI, we had a 7% year-over-year rate growth, which was the highest like in the company. So something that we do look at is the rent growth and how much we're able to get out of the community. But obviously for this specific community, we put in like millions and millions of dollars in renovations. So we need to kind of get our money's worth out of that money that we put into the community. So essentially what I had here was like my tiers and what we said we were going to start at and end at. typically Jana will push back a little bit with me on, hey, I think we could start a little bit higher. So what I do when I kind of look at her questions is I'm not like typically a yes man. So it's sometimes like if you get questions from your portfolio manager or asset manager and they're suggesting something, it like the best thing not to do is just be like, okay, and then just change it. Like actually use data to support the decisions that you're making, like we mentioned earlier. So some things that I look at is, okay, what did our rates end at last year? What was our average rate last year? If we're saying, oh, can we start our 2 bedrooms at $1,200 when our average rate last year was $1,006? To me, that's too aggressive. Given that last year, this is kind of where we ended at, and this was the average rate. But other things that we take into account are College House is one of our other market survey technically that we use for the market. So I kind of look at what our competitors' rates are, and if a lot of people I feel like are not sharing that anymore. So like ACC, Scion, Greystar, they're not really sharing their market survey. So sometimes I can't rely on certain properties by using College House or Terrain because they won't give us their information over the phone. So sometimes it's as easy as going to their website or calling as a prospect and trying to figure out what their rates are. So again, seeing where we ended at last year, looking at what our competitors are putting out and what we had in our performa can kind of give me an idea of where I think we can start. So this is just something that I've been working on this week is making recommendations for where we should start. And then based off of where our competitors set, and then, asset management coming back with, do we think that we can start here? Renewals are getting this rate. Where can we start new leases at? And so I actually just saw that she just responded. She said okay to most of mine, but she has a couple of more questions that she has with some other floor plans that we need to look at. So again, it's taking data into consideration, but also trying to make all parties like on the same page of what we want to do. So rate setting has been one of my projects that I've been working on this week. Yes, Chelsea.
I had a random question along with that's along the lines of rate setting, because I'm familiar with the rate recommendation memos. Like that's how I have always done it as well. Is there a reason why you guys switched back to this instead of utilizing YieldStar? Was it because you did it in as far as like occupancy or rate growth where YieldStar had predicted?
It was more for legality reasons.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. I didn't know, because like I said, I haven't really utilized YieldStar, so I didn't know if it was more just like what they were projecting was maybe not realistic or not attainable, and seeing where the community ended, maybe it was like it made more sense to go back to the rate recommendation where you as the portfolio manager are the one digging in and utilizing the data to provide informed decisions. So
yeah, it was more of a risk factor, and using a program like that to kind of gauge pricing. So just more from a risk standpoint, we reverted back to doing the tiers.
gotcha, makes sense.
Amanda?
My question was, in your role for your like CMs, is this workbook shared with them? Like, do they have the level of visibility to see what Jana's commenting and asking you, or does it all funnel through you?
So I'm very big, and Jana does give me pats on the back always for doing this, but I involve my CMs in everything. So like I had my CMs build this out. Like, I'm like, you guys do the tiers, you guys look at this, because the way that they're going to grow and like be in my seat if they want to one day is by understanding all of these things. So I actually had like Amanda, who's a community manager, take a stab at the start and end rates. And I kind of told her like, utilize these 3 reports and kind of take a look at it. And then we go over it together, and I kind of guide her on like, well, like, look at this. Like, do you think that starting here is a good starting point? So at least giving my CMs the chance to kind of take a stab at it. And then from there, I will review and make tweaks, and then I send it to asset management. But like Amanda, who's a community manager at this site, we got on a call like twice today to kind of go through the questions. And again, it takes more time, but I want to make sure she understands like the questions that are being asked and what changes we need to make. So I think sometimes PMs, and even I've done it by myself, like I've done it myself where it's just easier for me to do it. It takes way less time, but that's not how community managers are going to learn. So even for like MTLs or CMs on the call, like looping your team members that you oversee into things is really helpful to give them insight on growth. So yeah, like Amanda basically did most of this. And then I kind of just helped her with tweaking and answering the questions.
I had a follow-up kind of an ask even with that. This is exactly how it was like when I was a community manager, and I had a really open relationship with my asset manager. And so I felt like I was a lot more well-rounded on like understanding everything about my community and where questions would come from at times. It's been more of a struggle joining CX3 because we aren't always looped into all those conversations. Obviously I'm on account side, so like I don't rate recommendations, not anything that my hand would be in, but like variance notes, that's a feedback that we get a lot on CX3 is just discrepancies with that kind of stuff, and the why a question's being asked or why it should be worded that way, or just whatever it is. We don't always get the insights of the client, and so I don't know. I personally feel like that would help a lot because I did have that kind of exposure being a CM, and it helped me so much. And it's kind of a crutch sometimes when I'm doing variance in my role now.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, yeah, I'm trying to think of how to answer your question. So you're just saying like, how do you get more exposure to what the clients are requesting?
Yeah, I guess I was just kind of, it sounds like you probably already do this, but I was kind of just requesting if you have conversations with a client and there's like a variance issue or maybe like a CapEx project, just, different things that are going on with the community that us at CX3 were explaining. It's hard for us at times, like me personally, I struggle with finding out information sometimes because I'll really have to dig because I'm not like, included in some of those conversations. So maybe just creating the visibility that you give to CMs, also providing that to CASs as far as like client requests or wording on different variance things. I think it would help me.
Yeah. Honestly, I would say like, at least on the CGI side, our asset managers aren't like too like questioning everything. I think third party, it's definitely a lot more. But yeah, I have no problem like looping like your CAS and the CAM into maybe like bigger issues that we have. So like kind of just more visibility so that you guys can see it, so that you're able to explain these things. I would say like, as far as the CASs, I do loop them into a lot of things and I like G-chat them all the time. But as far as like bigger projects that are going on that we know is going to cause a big variance so that you guys are the ones explaining it, we can definitely like loop you guys into those emails so that you at least can see what's going on. Cool. I know we only have 5 minutes left, so I was going to touch on another thing that I'm working on, but something else that I do on a regular basis is I constantly have Entrada reports pulled up, and it's kind of giving me an idea of like how our teams are leasing this week. Are we meeting our leasing goals for the week? And so this kind of gives me a base point of being able to just look at something really quickly and be able to chat and say, hey, I saw we have 3 leases for the week. We need 5 to meet our goal. Like, are we almost there? So constantly like pulling reports and being in communication with my teams, it just kind of lets them know that I'm looking at things. So just to make sure that I'm like very plugged into what they're doing. And then even on a maintenance level, I'm always looking at our work order summary. I mean, we just came off of turn about a month ago from some of my sites. So you can see here, I mean, one property we're almost trending at 300 work orders. This is a property that has 1,100 residents at, so it's huge. But this kind of is a trigger to me, like, do we have open roles here? How are we doing on hiring? Do I need to, request a traveler? We've had many travelers come to VOT in the last couple of weeks. So it's just kind of giving me an idea of like what our bandwidth is. And this is going to contribute to how many renewals we get out of the door too. I mean, if we're sitting at 300 work orders a month after move-in and we're not meeting our renewal goals, that could definitely be one of the factors why. So it's kind of like, okay, looking at this, our teams are closing a good amount of work orders. How many do they have open? And I have no problem like messaging the CM and the MTL at the same time, hey guys, we've closed 30 work orders do we think we can get this under 10 by the end before the weekend? And just making sure that I'm looping in MTLs too, to the things that I'm asking about, and work orders being one of them. Especially, I want to make sure like the resident satisfaction is there before we start asking for a renewal, and maintenance plays a big part in that. So again, these are just kind of some of the reports that I have up constantly, and along with just working on different projects, asking our CMs if they have anything that they need help with, constantly looking at our open roles, making sure that we're hiring for those. I'm just kind of looking at like different reports day to day. But other than that, that's kind of what I'm working on right now.
Yeah, thanks, Anais. Appreciate it. We have a few minutes left if folks have questions. Yeah, Vince.
I don't have a question. I just want to tell. I don't want to say her name wrong. Anais.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. I was just at your property at VOT.
Yes.
So it's not in bad shape. Once they get a leader in there, it's gonna be okay. I'm still looped in with their text messages a little bit, so I throw my opinion out there every once in a while for some things.
Thank
Of course,
you.
without being there, you can't really do a lot. But I talk to Amanda and try to keep her head up.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Yeah, we have our MTL starting next week, thankfully. And they were like, can we hire Vince? Can he be the MTL here? They wanted to keep you, that's for sure. So we appreciate your help.
Yes, ma'am. I told them I'd come back. It's up to y'all. I'll come back and help y'all as much as possible.
Thank you so much.
Love the sense of community here. Anybody else? Any closing questions before we sign off here? Yeah, Amanda.
I was gonna ask if you could talk a little bit about like client calls. That's something that I don't have a whole lot of exposure to. And just how does that go? How did you get comfortable with it when they ask you something really difficult or you don't know the answer to? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, so I'll say with CGI, because we're like owned and managed, we don't have like standing calls with clients with our asset managers because they're internal to Cardinal. So they have access to everything that they need. So if there is something, it'll just be like an email or a G-chat question. But I can speak to more so when I was on the third party side. I had weekly calls. And I think just being the most prepared as possible and having an agenda is like really important. So we can make sure that we're guiding the conversation. EB has a lot of exposure. I don't know if she still does, but with like Mark and everybody, she would have like direct conversations with the client alongside the portfolio manager. So I even think like getting on those calls just as like a fly on the wall, Amanda, and even with your camera off, just to kind of listen in, will kind of give you an idea of what questions are asked. But usually it's just kind of universal. They're kind of wanting to know usually how leasing is going, you know, how our financials doing, all of that. So I think just kind of using data when communicating with them is, again, the best thing. So trying to take the emotion out of it and just sticking to factual things and how we're, you know, if they're really concerned about AR, it's like, okay, this is where we're at. This is the improvement from last month. And this is what we're doing moving forward to kind of get that under control. It's really important to just kind of give them the reassurance that you're on it and that you're working on it and all of those things. But I think too, like, you're not going to know everything. And so I think it's very okay to just say, oh, thanks, Jim, for the question. I'll look into that and I'll follow up with you after the call. I think it's better to say, like, you need more time to dig into something than just to spew out an answer because you think you need to know everything. Not everybody knows everything. I don't know everything. It's okay. And depending on the client, maybe they want an immediate answer, but I think it's better to just say, you know, let me get back to you on that and I'll circle up after this call and let me dig into that more. I think that's totally fine to say while you kind of loop in different resources that you have and, you know, look at whatever reports you need to look at to kind of come up with an answer for them. Hopefully that's helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, Vince.
Hey, this is going back to Jay's question. What he's talking about leaving his people behind. I'm in that same boat myself. So the biggest thing is I started talking to my guys about accountability and showing them things. So, all right, you get this, you get that. and just make sure they're included in everything. I'm in your same boat. I want to move up, but I know if I leave, what's gonna happen here. So I'm in your same boat. So I just want to say, man, you ain't by yourself.
Appreciate the kind words, Vince. Any last questions, everybody? Appreciate your time, appreciate your questions, your curiosity. I'll send up a follow-up email after this with links to the Ascend page. So there's a recording of this call if you want to share with any of your team members that you think could benefit. And there's also sign-up links for all of our future sessions, recordings of all of our past sessions. Just, keep people coming back here and connecting and learning. So thank you so much for your time and openness, Anais. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And for everybody else after this, if you have anything, like I'm pretty open, so you can chat me if you want to jump on a call and like have a 30-minute chat. I've mentored a lot of team members at Cardinal and like have had people just ask me questions, and I'm always willing to take the time out to chat and help you out. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.